What's going on, Bucs fans? Back here again at the Pirate Parlay podcast on the Sick Podcast Network. I told you guys we're going 3 days a week. We're back here at our normal time slot, Wednesday at 7 p.m. We got another special guest. We're talking all things draft. The Bucs now have 15 identified guys on their official 30 visits. So those things are starting to add up. We'll run through each one of those players. And then we'll also, my new mock just came out. Well, I teased it last week with Mr. John Ledyard on here. So we'll break that down too. And then we'll wrap it up with another 7-round mock draft again, as always. So super excited to get the show rolling. We'll see you guys on the other side.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
We are back here on the other side. Again, as always, I like to I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Again, thanks for tuning in to the Pirate Parlay podcast. I'm your host, JC Allen. Appreciate everyone that's over on X watching. Come on over to YouTube, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. Just let you know when my pretty face goes live and you get some of the best coverage of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And everyone who's listening to podcast form as well, come visit us. Check us out live one time, but appreciate you guys listening over there after the show has been uploaded. But let's waste no time to get into our special guest. He is a NFL draft analyst over at the Pro Football Network. He is Ian Cummings.
What's up, JC?
Hey, how we doing, Ian? Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. We are on the home stretch now. I think it's only 2.5 weeks until actually just over 2 weeks now. It's Wednesday, so it's on a Thursday. It's a lot of fun, man. This class in particular, a lot of variance, a lot of entropy with what might happen. So many different possibilities, but a lot of fun too. I think when you have this kind of variance, there's a lot more to explore, and that just makes it all the more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's truly a crapshoot, I think. And like if you look at it, I've been talking about this, there's probably maybe 12 to 15 like true first rounders, and everyone beyond that into maybe like even the late 60s, early 70s, there's a lot of good talent to be had. And I heard I saw someone say this the other day. This is a starter draft.
Yeah.
There's very few blue chip guys, but most teams should be able to come away with at least 2 to 3 serviceable starters out of this draft from the first 3 rounds, just because of how good it's quality. It's not quantity of greatness at the top, but quality throughout.
Yeah, and I will say too, like a starter talent in the right environment, with the right coaching, with the right role, can become almost a superstar, right? Like Zach Bond with the Eagles is one example. No one was as high on him coming out. I believe he was with the Saints originally, but went to the Eagles and entered Vic Fangio's defense and became an all-pro off-ball linebacker, right? So, you never know what outcome a certain player is going to ordain once they enter the NFL. And I think that's what makes it so fun, is that we don't have as much blue chip talent, but we have a lot of guys that have the potential energy to become really good players in the exact right situation too. You can unlock even more upside with them. So a lot of potential energy. That's the term I like to use. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's truly with a team like the Buccaneers, they went out there and attacked what they needed to in free agency before free agency started, bringing back Levante, bringing back Ben Bredeson and Chris Godwin, getting the big ticket in the edge rusher and Hassan Reddick that they feel like they've been missing the last couple of years. And then also attacking the depth on the team with Charlie Heck as your swing tackle, Anthony Walker, Kindle Valdor, re-signing Bryce Hall, and some of those depth defensive linemen, Greg Gaines, CJ Brewer, bringing Trask back. So they filled out their team where they're not going in there saying, oh, we need, we're good here. Maybe we need a backup quarterback. Maybe we need a backup here, or they're not even in that position for some of those positions. It's like running back is a super deep draft. Wouldn't be shocked if they maybe grabbed one with Rashad White in his last year. But like quarterback, they're not probably looking at anything unless there's immense value there or something like that, and just BPA by far. But then why are they down that far is the question, right? Mm-hmm. So they've set themselves up to go in a variety of ways. On the defensive side, there's clearly needs. On the offensive side, there's luxuries, I guess you would say. They've been linked to a few wide receivers coming in here for 30 visits, some formals at the combine. But when you look at the Bucs from like an outside perspective, what do you perceive as their top needs? What did you think of their season overall? And what do you think they need in this draft to maybe push them into that Super Bowl conversation?
Yeah, for sure. I think looking at the season that they had, I think, there's been a little bit of a conversation about, Todd Bowles and whether they can truly make it to the Super Bowl, right? And everything. But the way they played last year, the way they competed, Baker Mayfield having another year like he had, top 14 QB in the league at least, I think they have the firepower. And this is the thing with the Buccaneers for me, right? Whenever I think the ideal goal to come out of free agency, the goal at the very least, the baseline is to get in a position where you're not cornered into a certain spot in the NFL draft, right? So that you're not completely desperate at one spot. And like there are needs that you can pinpoint that are heavier than others. Like linebacker is one that I would throw out there. Levante David, they did get him back, but he's getting older, and I think you can have another starter alongside him, right? KJ Britt was not up to par in either phase last year, and I think looking at Jahad Campbell in round one, that would be a great fit potentially if he's there. But and then corner as well. I think Zion McCollum has a lot of athleticism, a lot of raw talent, and Jamel Dean, when he's available, has a lot of talent, right? But availability has been a question for him in recent years. So I think getting some more depth and starting upside at the boundary could be a good spot. But this is a team that I think it has positioned themselves exactly the way you'd want coming out of free agency, right? Like you said, they've reinforced their depth at a lot of positions. They got key free agents back at key positions, and I think getting Baker Mayfield, Todd Bowles, they have the continuity in the right places too. And the NFC South is still not a division that really screams competition, right? The Panthers are still kind of rebuilding with Bryce Young, and he turned it on down the stretch last year, but I don't know if they're at a place where I can say they're a legitimate threat for the Buccaneers. The same goes for the Saints as well, right? With Derek Carr, Kellen Moore might have to restart a little bit there too. The biggest threat would potentially be the Falcons, depending on what happens with Michael Penix in year two, but even they have massive holes on the defensive side of the ball too. So I look at the rest of the division, and the Buccaneers are still that kind of team. Like I need to see them fill some more holes on the defensive side before I can say they're bona fide Super Bowl contenders. But with Baker Mayfield, with Todd Bowles, with the returning firepower, with the depth, I think they're easily in the best situation to keep control of the NFC South and ultimately get a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think they are a few pieces away, especially on that defensive side. And some luck with the injury game. They were banged up last year. They went into that Chiefs game.
Which, that's just the spin of the wheel. You never know who's going to get caught by that.
Right. They need that luck this year. They went into that Chiefs game with Sterling Shepard as their number one, with all three of their top guys out. You need to build against that. And that's why they brought in some wide receivers. And I guess we'll start there because I think that's the most shocking spot for a lot of Bucs fans. If they did bring in a first round wide receiver, they've brought in 3 so far for top 30 visits. Only one of them has that first round buzz. The other ones are probably second. Definitely day 2 guys. I don't think the Stanford kid is going to fall to day 3. But we'll start with the first round guy because I think that would leave a lot of Bucs fans with their jaw on the floor. Matthew Golden from Texas. Why are we taking a wide receiver in the first round? We have Mike Evans. Jalen McMillan had 8. Why are we doing this? Why are they doing that? What is it about him that you think they like, and what makes you think that it'd be a good fit for the Bucs? Just explain maybe what your logic would be to someone who's asking you that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely looking at it from an outsider perspective. You have to think like they're thinking long term, right? Because obviously Mike Evans isn't going to be around forever. They brought him back, but he's not going to be around forever, right? Chris Godwin, they brought him back. Jalen McMillan has that upside as a wide receiver 3 and really turned it on down the stretch last year as that big play threat, touchdown generator. So it's more of a future-minded move for sure. And it's not the one that I would probably make in round 1 for them. I would probably stand pat with what you have at wide receiver and then get a guy on day 2 or day 3, right? But Matthew Golden, what makes him really special, in my opinion, is, you look at everyone points to the speed first, right? The 4.29 40-yard dash, right? That's the first thing that comes to mind when you read the paper. But there are so many other elements of his game that are more impressive to me on tape, right? And I'll make this clear. I don't think he plays to that 4.29 speed all the time. I think he looks more like a 4.4 guy on tape more often than not. But you're getting a guy who is, it's the common archetype, right? Guys who can separate, twitchy, explosive, fluid, in and out of his breaks, right? He's got a full route tree, and then he can use that to route up guys in man or carve through zone and find space and then make plays at the catch point. That's another thing with him is that, he's, I think, 5'11", around 190, 195, but he's got a pretty decent wingspan for that size, and he can box guys out. He's got good body control at the catch point. He really improved his hand-eye coordination and conversion at Texas as well. So I think with Matthew Golden, you have a guy who can be that type of movement Z, who can kind of fit in many different ways. And, moving on from Liam Cohen is going to be the big question mark, right? How are they going to be able to utilize him with so many different pieces? That's going to be something they'll have to find on their own. But Matthew Golden is my wide receiver 2 behind Travis Hunter. So I'm really high on what he can bring. He kind of reminds me, my comp for him is T.Y. Hilton, Indianapolis Colts. I think he's got that explosiveness. I think he's got the route running ability, but the slashing route running where he can really bend on breaks and, reduce his strides and retract really quickly after pressing vertical. But then he's got some really legit catch point skills too. I mean, this is a guy who's not afraid to use his frame, not afraid to make tough adjustments to the ball. And he's got some slippery rack ability too. So I think in terms of the talent, there's no reservations from me. The question is, how do you utilize him with all the weapons that you have in the short term? I think long term, when more turnover happens, he'll get more opportunities. But how do you use him to rationalize that capital when you have really pressing needs on the defensive side? It's tricky, but talent-wise, I love the player.
Right. Yeah. And there you can see why the Bucs are intrigued by him too, especially I think he adds a different dynamic to what they have with that speed. They hoped Trey Palmer would have been that guy with his 4.3 speed, but really wasn't. But they want someone who can stretch the field and who can also be a threat in the intermediate as well. And, he's got the speed on end arounds and stuff like that. Wide receiver screens can be used as well. And I think that's what intrigues him. Another guy kind of in that same vein, but guy who's, works out of the slot, can be used on end around, stuff like that. Jalen Knoll from Iowa State. He's projected to go anywhere from the second or third round. I don't think he sneaks past there, depending on it. This is the team where the draft where it's how do you love them? Then take them. It's going to be a lot of one of those. And some teams are going to love them. Some aren't. Some are going to be in the middle. And it's just going to be crazy to see where everyone goes, like you kind of alluded to earlier in the podcast. So talk to me about Jalen Knoll, his game, what he does well, and how, maybe he'd fit in with this Bucs team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, going off of our Matthew Golden conversation, if you're not comfortable with Golden in round 1, a really nice consolation prize is Jalen Knoll in round 2 or round 3. I would take him round 2. He has a fringe. He's kind of a top 45, top 50 grade for me. So, I would start to consider him in that 33 to 50 range. I'm that high on Knoll and what he brings to the table. I think in terms of route running, he's a little more high-hipped than Golden is, and that can impact his reduction on really sharp breaks like comebacks and curls. But you're getting a guy who has that legit vertical speed again. He ran a 4.39. He jumped over 40 inches in the vertical, so he's insanely explosive and twitched up, just a powder keg on the offensive side in multiple phases, and that shows up on tape too, where he's got that, really unique long strider speed for his frame being under 6 foot, but he can, stretch the field with those strides and get up seams and contest vertical. And he's got good ball tracking ability too. There are some focus drops over the middle of the field, so I think he's not quite as solid in that phase. But if you need a vertical weapon with rack ability too, and then a really pretty solid route tree, right? I think with the modest hip stiffness for his size, that may limit him a little bit. Some guys might be able to be more expansive with those multi-layered routes, but he's a good route runner. He's savvy. I think he knows, how to use his pacing and his tempo with his footwork to bait DBs off balance and offset them in space. So, he's got that nuance to his game too. And he's the vertical rack weapon, one of the best 3-level threats in this class, right? He can separate well enough. That he can make plays at the catch point when he's not contested. When he is contested, it's a little bit of a different story, but he's such a good separator that he doesn't have to rely on that part of his game. And he can stretch vertically. He can stretch seams in the rack phase with that speed and be that dynamic player for you. So again, I think the key word is value here. If you're not comfortable with Golden in round 1, Jalen Noel, really nice consolation prize, and you don't have to worry too much about forcing things with him year 1 because you didn't spend a round 1 pick on him. You're able to get defensive help in that round.
Another player that they're bringing in at the wide receiver position is Alec Aomanor. Is that
Alec Aomanor? I think that's how I've been saying it.
But Aomanor, we'll go with it. The Beast came out today, so now I'm going and learn how to pronounce everyone's name.
I know, right?
Yeah, but yeah, he's another guy they brought in. You can see why they like him. He's got good size. He's a very willing blocker. He's play that X role well. Constant in production, although it dipped a little bit this year. Good contested catcher. But what do you think about AL? What do you think about him?
It's gonna be tough, man. I some of these names I have to stand in front of the bathroom mirror and practice them 10 times, right? Like remember that class with Adetokunbo, Ogundeji, Levi
Oh yes,
Uzurike? That was a tough
Deo
one, man. That was
Adeyingbo.
that was definitely the trial by fire where that's concerned. But Alec Aomanor, he's more of a round 3 guy for me. I think with the Buccaneers, the appeal is that is going to be that, as a rotational wide receiver, he'll have a lot of utility right away because he's probably one of the best blocking receivers in the class. And on top of that, 6'2", 210, he's a pretty good, multi-level threat when it comes to having some rack ability with that speed and that size and that play strength. And then, his game against Travis Hunter, probably the highlight of his entire eval, in 2023, where he mossed Travis Hunter at the catch point. Like he's got some really nice body control. The key thing with Aomanor for me though, is he's 6'2", 210. He runs a 4.4, but I don't always think he's as well-versed as a route runner as I would want him to be, the quickness that he brings. And then I don't always think he plays with the amount of strength that I would want him to with his frame at the catch point and as a rack guy. I think a lot of times you're left wanting more from the tape. I do think he's quick enough as a route runner. I do think he has the catch point skills and enough rack ability. For me, I'm still waiting for him to put it together. But for a guy who has the size and the talent and the tenacity and the mindset, the temperament as a blocker, all of those traits are really conducive to success in a rotational role in round 3 and then could develop into more. But round 3 is where probably the earliest I would consider him.
Yeah, I do like him. He is a much better player in zone going against zone coverage. He'll struggle with some press coverage, and he's not sudden in his start stops either. That's another thing. It's very kind of
more
clunky.
Lateral.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of reasons to like him, and I think that's why the Bucs, want to get to know him a little bit more. It could be a smoke screen, who knows, this time of year. But usually when the Bucs bring a player in, they're really kind of getting some due diligence, get him in the building, get to know him a little bit more. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's someone they consider there in the 3rd round at pick 83. Switching to the defensive side, because this is going to be a defensive defensive draft for the Bucs. We'll start in the trenches. The newest report came out of Omar Norman Lott, the defensive tackle for Tennessee. The Bucs have their starting defensive linemen set up with Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and Logan Hall. Logan Hall is in a contract year, but Jason Light did talk about the recent success teams like the 49ers had, like the Eagles had, bringing those waves of pass rushers in to keep guys fresh throughout the entirety of the game. So talk to me about Omar Norman Lott and what he brings to the table, what he brings to the league.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a sack producer. I mean, he's a guy who can generate power on the interior. 6'2", 294 pounds, near 34-inch arms, right? So right away, that's the profile that I want on the interior. And in particular for the Buccaneers, they run a lot of odd front lines. So, getting him at 3 tech or 4-eye or even shading out to 5 tech. I mean, he's got that power profile that you want. I mean, he's got the natural leverage at 6'2", but then at 34-inch arms, you can, make contact sooner. You have a lot of power and leverage to work with, while you're getting under blockers. So that component, that combination is really appealing. I think, at times, being under 300, he can get washed out by duos and combo blocks at times in the run defense. But overall, I think, he's got a pretty sturdy profile with the natural leverage and the proportional length where he can anchor and use swim moves to get inside. But, he's one of those guys who I think profiles well, in particular for the kinds of fronts that they like to use. And then on top of that too, club moves, long arms, bull rushes, like he can use that length as a pass rusher to get home too. So he's a player who's kind of, in that day 2 range for me, because he doesn't have the elite mass and he's a little bit narrow with his frame. So there are times where he can get washed out as a result. But a player who, especially for Todd Bowles, where they like to play downhill aggressive a lot of the time, I think Omar Norman Lott's stylistic tendencies, they really fit well.
Yeah, I like the player too. Quick off the line too. He's got a quick first step. And there's some things that you wish were, a little bit better going in, but not besides like the things that he can't change. with his frame and everything like that.
Yeah.
I wish sometimes he had a better pass rush plan, even though he was very successful getting there. You could see sometimes it was just kind of freelancing more so than actually, setting guys up throughout the course of a game. So,
And a lot
but
of
that's
times
something
guys
you can,
with that power profile too, they'll kind of rely on it to a fault,
right.
just kind of go straight forward and not really have any nuance on their second attempts and counters. So that's something to develop for sure. The flashes are there, but can be more consistent.
Right, and that's great when you're going up against Old Dominion, but when you're going up against someone that is experienced and knows how to do it, those are the things. But again, those are things you can learn, and he'll have Vita Vea, Kajikansi, and a pretty good defensive line coach to help him out. Staying on the defensive line, going to Texas A&M, where they are loaded on the defensive line in this draft, very well represented, and should have most of their players gone by day 2, those starters at least. Shamar Turner. Defensive tackle from there. Talk to me about him. What's his game like? What does he excel? What does he need to work on? And how would he fit with the Bucs?
Yeah, for sure. I think Shamar Turner kind of a similar archetype to Omar Norman Lott. They're both guys who are well leveraged and have the proportional length. Shamar Turner is a little bit taller. I think he's 6'3", 290, and then 33.5-inch arms. So he's got, a little too, similarly, he's got a little bit of a narrow frame when, his arms are down, but when he's able to fully engage and, get out in front and use his arms and his length to channel power, that's when he can really shine. I think he's got the explosiveness and the agility. He's a former edge player who eventually rotated inside for Texas A&M. So he's got that inbuilt role versatility where if you wanted to use him on stunts, he's got the agility and the hip flexibility to realign his hips before exerting power. So he can draw it from his lower body, which is really nice. But then in run defense too, I think he's probably a little bit better when it comes to aligning his base and using his long levers for arms to, get an anchor and set the gap and, not give up too much displacement. I was really impressed, especially when he was able to one gap, how sturdy he could be. And then on top of that too, the explosiveness, the agility, and the pass rushing phase is really appealing too. So still a guy who's kind of feeling it out on the interior, but he brings the motor and that's one thing too. He's got a hot motor. He needs to learn how to channel it and kind of, control it sometimes because he can get heated and there were some personal fouls as a result of that. But again, you want your players to be passionate and aggressive, right? I think if you can channel that and maximize that kind of passion, that's a great thing. But especially at the NFL level where, tempers and tensions can run pretty high. You got to learn how to, use it as a strength, but also not let it get out of control. But aside from that, he's incredibly talented. He landed in my top 10 defensive tackles. And I think in round 3, that's the perfect spot to get him. And I think he could be a really good long-term investment for you.
Yeah, I looked at, I was going to say that if you didn't bring it up about his motor, he's always going, and sometimes it could be to a fault. But I like the player for sure. I think his 2023 season was better than this past season. I think a lot of that is there's just kind of chaos on the line. None of these guys really produced. When you watch Nick Scourton, who we'll bring up next, because why not just jump over to the next to him on this defensive line? We're moving to edges anyways. When you watch it, look at his produced stuff, it's way better than what he was doing last year. And I think part of the reason why, and obviously with Shamar Stewart, just super kind of raw and just an athlete playing football more than a football player who's athletically gifted. I think it's one of these things where don't trust the 2024 tape totally. I think trust some of the 2023 tape too. But what do you think about Nick Scourton? He's got some heavy hands, but what do you like about him and how does he fit?
Yeah, and he's the perfect example, like you said. Go back to 2023 if you're really not sure. I think Texas A&M, I can't pinpoint what the problem was. Maybe they were just trying to do too much. We know they like to, stunt guys and kind of use them across the line and everything. And maybe they're trying to be too creative and not letting guys settle in and just do what they do best. But Nick Scourton is one guy who, he's a pretty highly graded player for me, top 35. I love the finesse that he plays with for his size. Playing weight, probably over 260. He's 6'3", 33-inch arms. So not the best length, but enough to channel power. But his finesse is really impressive, especially on the Purdue tape. On the Purdue tape, he was quick off the line. He was explosive. And this is like when he's at his top weight too. Like he was not a light guy. And he's getting off the line with a ton of heat. He's got the finesse to levy spin moves and inside counters. And when his hands land, like he's got some heavy hands, like you said. I mean, chop moves, club moves, chop rips. Like, he can finish those hand moves and get around the arc a little bit. He's got a little bit of lower body flexibility, not elite bend, but enough for his size where you can say it's a functional strength. But mainly going to be a power rusher, going to win as a technician and a finesse guy, who can use those spin moves to, set the ice pick and get around too. And then with his size and his natural leverage, he can be pretty sturdy in run defense too. So I like the pass rushing profile a lot. And I think he gives enough size to set the edge and run defense and not let that B gap get too wide. And, at the same time too, a good motor guy who will chase plays in pursuit. Not quite as rangy, not quite as twitched up as Shamar Stewart, but that's a high bar to clear. Shamar Stewart is one of one athletically. I think Nick Scourton, has the pass rush arsenal, has the size adjusted fluidity, and just the size and sturdiness in general to eventually be a really productive NFL player.
Yeah, and one thing that I also do like about him is, you mentioned the size. He was playing at 280 last year.
Yeah,
at edge and outside linebacker, he line up like wide 7'2", he's already dropped 20 pounds, like 15, 20 pounds. You look at, I'm trying to look at his numbers from his pro day right here, but he's 257. So yeah, he's dropped like more than 20 pounds from his playing weight, which obviously is something that they asked him to do in Texas A&M, was bulk up a little bit more, because he'd be playing, more defensive end than outside linebacker. Like, I think he's going to go back to what we saw in 2023, more so than what we saw last year. And I think a lot of teams are probably banking on that too. There's a reason why he was getting mid first round love 2 months ago. It's because if you turn back the time, there's a player who's really impressive.
And I think in particular for Tampa Bay, something that they've lacked for a long time is proven pass rush production, someone that you can rely on to be that pass rushing force. And, when he gets into an NFL training regimen, right, he can bulk up the right way, I think, and maybe get to a solid 265, still being able to rush from a 2-point stance. That's a lot of power in that frame, power and strength, but then to go with the finesse that he has too, I think he can be a really complete player. He's not quite as flashy as Shamar Stewart, but I think he gets underrated sometimes.
Yeah, another guy who seems like he's being underrated and kind of forgotten about a little bit here, but partially because he was banged up last year and he just didn't look right. The numbers didn't look right. But that's going to be Georgia's Mikael Williams. He just came in for a 30 visit with the Buccaneers. There's a lot to like about him. He's kind of more of, I think, of a tweener edge rusher, 5-tech, odd front type of guy when the Bucs go on their base. But what do you like about Mikael Williams? Is he kind of getting overlooked? He's a guy who's getting hyped as potentially a top 10 pick, and now he's like that fringe first rounder. Some people have him falling out. Some people have him going in that late 20s. But the Bucs brought him in for a visit, and they have picked 19. What do you like about Williams?
Yeah, he's a fun player. I think I do think he is getting overlooked in the sense that with the hype that Shamar Stewart has gotten, I don't think Mikael Williams should be that far below him. If we're talking about Shamar Stewart in the top 15, top 20, I think Mikael Williams should be top 25, right? At least, right? I think he's one of those guys who kind of fits the similar archetype. They're both long, athletic rushers who have some alignment versatility, but are relatively underdeveloped as independent pass rushers. If you need them to win one-on-one against a tackle on an island, they don't quite have the complete arsenal to do that. I will say Shamar Stewart has a higher ceiling even there within that archetype. And again, no one is Shamar Stewart. It's just as simple as that. Like, he's as explosive, as fast, as twitchy as you're going to get at that size. But I still think Mikael Williams has enough explosiveness, has enough agility to work with. And then I think, one thing that I really like about Mikael Williams' tape, kind of similar to, what we were talking about earlier with Shamar Turner, right? Being able to align your hips to drive power. Some guys are a little disjointed with how they do that, but you watch Mikael Williams on stunts and looping rushes, and he can stunt across alignments, get his hips in the right spot, and just plow through interior blockers like a sledgehammer, right? So he's got that power element where you can use him on stunts and he can be reliable for you, right? He might not get the sacks, he might not convert all the time, but he's one of the better pocket pushers in the class, one of the better pocket pinchers from wider alignments too. Like, he's going to reduce space for the QB, and that's a really good thing. There are some flashes of him winning with quick swim moves too, using that lateral agility, that length, and that torque to just wrench past guys with swim moves. Overall, needs to keep refining his pass rush arsenal. There's still not a ton there, but I do think if you're looking at him and Shamar Stewart side by side, Shamar Stewart has the higher ceiling, and that's a viable argument to take him before Michael. But I think Michael Williams is a little more role disciplined. I think whether you need him to set the edge, contain, or stunt, I think he can do all of those things, even though he's not the elite independent pass rusher. So I like him a lot. I think you have a really good framework, a foundation to work with. And there are some aspects of his game where he is a high floor player, high floor run defender, high floor contained defender, really good stunting lineman. I think that's where he's going to make his value early on. And then he does have room to develop in time.
I agree. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you just said there. I think right away, you're getting someone who can set the edge. Someone who's shown the flashes of being a disruptive pass rusher. And now you just work with him and get him there. But he's got everything, size, everything that you kind of look for, athleticism. It's just kind of getting him to fine tune things. And I think if you're a coach, that's what you do is I can fix him. I can get him there. And I think he'll be drafted in the first round. I see him falling out. A guy who's getting some first round buzz, who was probably a 4th or 5th round pick a couple weeks ago was Femi Oladejo, out of UCLA. Talk to me about Femi. Why is he shooting up the boards? And I don't mean shooting up the boards. Why are we catching up to their boards now and realizing that people have him a lot higher than what we thought?
Yeah. And the thing with first rounders is like there's always one or two surprises. We don't know who it's going to be. Femi could easily go in round 2 or even slip into round 3, right? So there's a ton of variance once you get to like 25 to 35 to 45. So, but Femi, he's more of a top 64 player for me, but he's easily a round 2 prospect. And I think if you're banking on the upside with him, there is reason to take him even higher. He's kind of the type of prospect that I think certain teams are going to want to be first in line for him because there are so many developmental green flags. He's 6'3", over 250, over 33-inch arms. He was playing off-ball linebacker until this past year at UCLA, right? 4 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, one of the lower pass rush productivity ratings, one of the lower pass rush win rates. And that's kind of natural when it's your first full year as an edge rusher. I think that'll come in time, but I think the execution is still coming along. His Senior Bowl showing was a really good step in the right direction, showed a lot of promise, but that's one-on-ones, right? So how is he going to fare in a real-time setting with actual 11-on-11 players? That's the tricky part with him. But Femi Oladejo, I think right away you're getting an explosive player with good bend for his size, with good speed to power as well. And then he's pretty sturdy in run defense too, being 6'3" with over 33-inch arms and over 250. He's got that stout, well leveraged frame with really good mass too, compact mass, and he can use that to he'll set the edge, but he can take on pullers as well and kind of seal off lead blockers for runners and, make plays in pursuit. And at the same time, if you're Todd Bowles, if you want to disguise rush looks, right, Femi can, fake the blitz and then drop in coverage. And he's really natural there because of his off-ball experience, or he can blitz from depth and he's got that closing speed and that speed to power where he can bowl through running backs who are trying to pass block and just make plays there. So I think the versatility is really fun. And then he's 21 years old. He's a high character guy. Everything that you hear is just glowing about his character. So I think getting this kind of player, again, with the developmental green flags at the very start of his developmental arc trajectory, I think that's a really compelling argument for teams. So I don't know if he goes round 1, but I think round 2, you're going to start to see teams kind of rushing to get in place to get this guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think I had a mock to the Bucs, I think in the 4th round 2 weeks ago. I just really like the player, and I love that he's got that off-ball linebacker experience. So Todd can get really creative with him. I mean, there were times last year he's got Kalijah Cansey as off-ball linebacker. He'll put Vita Bea back there, Anthony Nelson, and with a guy like that, super versatile, and you can show some different looks, and I think you'll like that a lot. We'll look at the linebacker position here because they brought one in. He's a very intriguing one of the most mature players, one of the older players at the position in the draft. But I really like his game. I think he's just a complete player, but the age might knock him down. He's South Carolina's Demetrius Knight Jr. What do you see with him? I see he's maybe slipping down to the 3rd round. In some instances, some things you're seeing, he was early 2nd round, now down into maybe the mid 3s where the Bucs could have a shot to get him at 84. Why is he
JC, you cut out for a little bit there.
I'm back. Demetrius Knight Jr.
Yeah. So real quick, he's a pretty I feel like he's a safe evaluation, right? He caught my eye first when he was playing at Charlotte a couple seasons ago, and the transfer to South Carolina, and had the year that he had with 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, only 1 pass deflection, not a ton of playmaking and coverage. And I think that combined with the age is maybe where there's some reservations. He's definitely more comfortable, working downhill. And I think that's where he makes his money. A lot of the linebackers in this class, like even the top guys, Jihad Campbell, is really instinctive for such a young player, but struggles to take on blocks, right? Jalen Walker can be really hot and cold with his diagnosis. Demetrius Knight, you have a guy who's pretty rock solid above the shoulders. I think he has good gap instincts. I think he flows to the ball well. I think, and then at the same time too, being as big as he is, I think he's like 6'1", 6'2", over 240, I want to say. And then he's got pretty long arms for his frame too. So he can use those long arms to take on blocks at the first and second level, make sure that guys aren't getting displacement on him, and then make plays, convert at the tackle point, right? And then even though there's not a ton of playmaking and coverage, I do think he has good coverage mobility. I think he's pretty quick with his feet. I think he's pretty fluid for his size, and he's an explosive closer too. So he's going to make plays to limit rack as well. So just a really solid all-around linebacker, right? The age, I think it limits his prime years, right? Because you're getting him at 25 years old. Once he gets to 30, we've seen the conversation with the cliff coming for certain players.
Right.
I do think you're getting a shorter prime, but I also think, he's going to be a pretty solid starter pretty soon out of the gate. I think that's a valuable thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, and again, not like super flashy, but he did have with playmaking skills and coverage, but he did have an interception. He had 2 pass breakups. He didn't allow a touchdown. 17 for 24, not bad. 7 stops in coverage, 22 stops in the run game.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it. I like him a lot. I think if he's there if you can get him in the 3rd round, I love that.
Yeah.
But even in the 2nd round, I still like him. I like Chris Paul a lot too, but he has not been reported to have a visit. So the next grouping is all cornerbacks. We can touch on them real quick. First, we'll start with the 2 first-round guys or early 2nd round guys in Siobhan Revel and Trey Amos. I recently had them both mocked to the Bucs in my recent mock draft. I like both of those guys a lot. Why do you like them? Do you see them sneaking in the back of the first half? Or where do you have them going? Probably won't be around at 53.
Yeah, so I'll go quick because I know I can get long-winded, and we're already at 37 minutes here.
Oh, it's good.
Trey,
great information.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I spent so much time watching tape last week. It was insane. Savon Revel is a really fun player. I think the torn ACL is the big red flag on his evaluation, but all reports say he's on track to making a full recovery. So if he is, he's a bona fide 1st-round guy for me. 6'2", over 190, over 32-inch arms. He is explosive, fast. He ran a 4.4 and jumped 40 inches at ECU's spring camp I think it was last spring. So he's got the verified athleticism, and it shows up on tape. I mean, this dude is outrunning guys out of breaks. He's hawking in front of passes. He's got the route recognition, but he's also pretty good in press man. There are some times where he can be a little uncontrolled, but overall, I like his discipline. I think more often than not, he plays with feet first, but he knows how to use his length to jam and dictate guys too. And then he's a playmaker, both at the catch point and in run support. Yeah. So big fan of his slashing, his splicing ability, coming downhill with his length. I think he's my CB5. And Trey Amos just inched ahead of him for CB4. I'm a big fan of Trey Amos, probably one of the biggest. He'll be a top 30 player for me in a 1st-round grade. Kind of reminds me of, AJ Terrell. This comp kind of came to me when I was doing a RAS comparison. Really similar with their speed, their agility, their foot speed, but then also fluidity out of breaks. And he can play zone. He can play man because he's really, again, disciplined, well-versed in man coverage. He's got really good reaction to stimulus on breaks. But then in zone coverage, he's got really good route awareness, even in 2-on-1s where he can peel off and make plays. So just a really solid player all around with the athletic makeup at 6'1" with over 31-inch arms to be a high-level NFL starter. So Trey Amos, one of my guys for sure. I think a productive player with scheme versatility, and he'll be a great player for you.
Yeah, I like both of those guys a lot, and you guys know that if you're reading my mock drafts because I had them both going there. We'll jump into the middle rounds here, guys who could be in my upcoming mocks. Who knows? With Jacob Parrish and Noel Williams. These guys are like 3 to 4 range guys. I don't think Williams gets out of the 4th round. Talking about these guys, Parrish more of an inside guy, Noel more of an outside guy, but they both are super fiery guys.
Yeah, super fiery. Noel Williams, his competitiveness is one of the first thing that shows up on tape, man. I love how competitive he is in press man, but he's not just a firecracker. You know, he's really controlled and fluid and smooth in zone coverage too, and he reacts quickly to breaks. He ran a 4.5, 33-inch vertical, right? So he's not gonna, blast by you with his explosiveness. He's kind of a, above average athlete, but I love the competitiveness. I love the playmaking. He had 7 interceptions and 9 pass deflections. So this dude gets after the football. I think especially in man coverage, when he's able to, use that competitive physicality and that short area quickness to match and mirror guys, that's when he can really get in your grill. Because in zone coverage, sometimes he doesn't quite have enough explosion to close those gaps, over top breaks. But a really competitive player with man zone versatility and some playmaking as well. So might not be an elite athlete, so that limits his ultimate ceiling, but could end up being a really solid starter from the middle rounds and an ultimate gem, if you can get him in the right spot. Jacob Parrish does have the athleticism. I think he ran a 4.37. He jumped 37.5 inches. I think over a 10-foot broad. So explosive, fast, twitchy as well. I think he can be a little uncontrolled with that twitch with his technique sometimes. But again, he's very competitive. He can play the boundary or the slot, and he's been productive dating back to 2023. He's a player who kind of he functions like a gnat sometimes. He'll just get in your grill and he'll stay there. And I love those kinds of guys. Even though they're undersized, if you can stay inside your receiver's hip pocket, right? If you can contest at the catch point, those two things will be really good for you. And then the fact that he has that slot projection, I think makes him even more valuable, because I think 6 tackles for loss over the past 2 years. So he is willing and able to come downhill and make those kinds of stops too. So the explosiveness, the competitive mentality, I think those things bode well for him.
And then 2 of the guys, before we finish up with their official top 30 visits, one of them just broke right before the pod. So if you're not prepared, that's fine. I got something pulled up. But BJ Adams from UCF. And the other one's going to be Nico Reed from Oregon. So I'll let you start with Reed and then jump into Adams.
Yeah, I'll just right away on BJ Adams. I haven't watched enough of him to get a verified opinion, so I'll have to circle back to him at a later date. But Nico Reed, I got to catch a little bit of him before the pod, and he's a player who, well, first off, 5'10". I think he was listed at 180 for the 49ers upcoming pro day, so he's beefed up a little bit. I know he was at 160 at one point in his career, in his college career, but he's beefed up a little bit. Had a kick return touchdown as well, so I think that's one thing that helps his security, is having that inbuilt return experience. Even if he's not an immediate contributor on the defensive side, he's got that special teams ability where you can get him in there and kick returns, and he's got the speed, the quickness. Those things bode well. But even in coverage too, I like how he does have some boundary slot experience again, right? At his size, would probably project best as a slot if you are going to play him on defense, but probably good depth early on. But having that versatility helps. And then even though he's not the biggest guy, I do really appreciate, again, the short area quickness, the foot speed, the recalibration quickness over top breaks. And then he's pretty fluid when he's reducing and then, readjusting his hip alignment to break downhill. I think those things are really, really good qualities to have for a smaller defensive back, because obviously size is a mismatch. So if you can compensate for quickness and responsiveness, those things are really good. And then at the same time, I think 2 interceptions, 7 pass deflections. So when he does get at the catch point, with his length, he is going to be boxed out and outreached by bigger guys, but he's competitive, right? So I think, I look at him as really solid defensive depth, but then also I think where he's going to make more of his money will probably be as a return specialist.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just kind of looked on PFN, and they have a little write-up on BJ Adams, 6'1", 182, at a 4.7 RAS score. Looks like he ran a 4.46 40 at his pro day. Also, improving on a 4.53 from the combine. 31 3/4 arm length. So good arm length.
Yep.
And one of your colleagues I wrote, cornerback BJ Adams has above average size and length as an experienced player, having started all 4 years in college and saw playing time as a true freshman. Has given up 5 touchdowns the past 2 seasons and has average on-ball production. Only 11 career pass breakups in 4 years and just 2 interceptions, both of which came this year. He is physical corner who can border on reckless with the amount of hand fighting he features in game. Has been penalized a whopping 16 times in his career.
Definitely got to cut down that.
Yeah. Sound tackler who has only missed 8 career tackles in 4 years and has a career 7.5 missed tackle rating. Not somebody who was actively seeking out plays in the run game. Didn't have a single run stop in 2024. Only had one the previous season. Struggles with route recognition when in zone coverage. So sounds like a work in progress. Sounds like that's probably just it sounds like for the Bucs, that's more looking for PFA, priority free agent type deal.
Yeah.
Than potentially a draft pick. He is pretty down low on the board. Actually, it's not the 6th, 7th round pick for some other, analysts out there. So we'll see. This is the time to do your due diligence on people. All right, Let's jump to we'll skip my mock draft and we'll just jump right into a PF. We'll do a 7-round mock right now.
Do you remember which guys you got in like rounds 1 through 3?
In my mock?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I took I just finished writing it today.
I can give you a rapid fire review if you want.
All right, yeah. I'll give you while this is loading, I'll give you first round was Jahdae Barron. No trades.
Love that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll like the length, but he's got the slot boundary versatility and he's just a complete player in both phases.
Second round pick was Braden Swinson.
Oh, I love that. He's a top 50 guy for me. He's got bend, he's got speed, he's got power, and he's really sturdy in the run game too. I think he had 8.5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. So productive guy who I think gets really overlooked in this edge class. I like that fit a lot.
Third round was Kevin Winston Jr.
Okay. I like that. Developmental safety who is going to be really good in run support right away. He tackles like an apex predator. He's got range. But then I think if he can improve in coverage, he's got some all-around ability.
Fourth round was Barrett Carter.
That's phenomenal value for him. I've been a big fan of the athleticism, the coverage ability, right? A little bit smaller with his wingspan and length, but he's a guy who can be a really solid player for you.
Fifth round, which I don't think he's going to be there anymore, but Colorado State, Torrey Horton.
Ooh, Torrey Horton. Yeah, I don't know if he's there around 5, man. I like him as the top 100 guy personally, but that would be a phenomenal pick if you can get him there. 6'3", he's got speed, he's got zone beating ability, but the twitch to beat man too, and just really good catch point skills as well.
Yeah, he's really good. And then last one, you probably don't know that they're missing a 6, so the 7th round was NDSU offensive tackle Mason Miller.
Oh, I got to do work on him. I haven't done work on him, but
late. But he was really good. He's versatile, can play, play right tackle, left guard. Was part of an offensive line over the last 4 years that has had a top 5 rushing attack in the FBS. They just came off the championship. There's a few knocks. I was trying to NDSU tape is hard to find. NDSU anything is hard to find, so I'm trying to find stuff. And I had to call Cody Moak. I'm like, Cody, I need to talk to you about your teammate here. Just be honest with me. So he's like, oh yeah, he's really good. I'm like, well, this is what I've kind of gathered from just watching highlights and stuff. But is there anything else you'd like to add to it? He's like, yeah, I could tell you some stuff. Great character, leader. I was like, thanks, Cody.
That's the good thing is that you've got that in right. You can talk to Cody, but then also I think NDSU does have a little bit of a track record on the offensive line. He's developed at Tampa Bay, and I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. Cordell Volson didn't quite have that trajectory at Cincinnati. They'll probably be looking for his replacement soon, but he is at least an NFL player who should be quality depth in the future. And then Gray's Abel in this class as well. So they've got a track record, and those guys are always willing to finish plays and maul guys as well.
They are nasty finishers. They are nasty. They don't stop until the whistle blows or you're on the ground, and I love that
exactly
about them. They're just dogs. Shane, pull up the draft, please. All right, Shane's starting to get more love. I'm just acknowledging the man behind the curtain a little bit. So we're gonna start this draft 7 rounds. We'll enter solo. We'll go fast here, and we're gonna start right off. We'll consider trades, depending on availability and whatnot. We're gonna get phone calls anyways. Jacksonville wants us to move back to 36. We don't even know what it looks like yet, but we'll look at the trades first. This is interesting to me. A second and third to move back, but let's see what's available. How did they get picked 32? They must have made a trade. A first round pick and a second round pick. That is interesting to me. But before we look at that, let's look see who's available. Malachi Starks, Derek Harmon, I don't think they'll be on a war. I like Barron. I like Campbell. I like. Did Izaraku just go? Or is he still there?
I think he's still there. He's a little bit lower. Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that I like here, to be honest with you, and trading back wouldn't be a terrible idea. But what do you think? I always let my guests run the mock. So and fans, if you guys are out there watching, you want to comment and give your take, go ahead.
So I love Malachi Starks. He's a he's still very high on my board, and I'm a big fan of his projection. But I also think there are a lot of pretty good safeties who could be good complements to Antoine Winfield Jr. in this class. Like if you were going to get Jonas Sanker or Kevin Winston, like you said, in round 3 or round 4, that could be a phenomenal value as well. And I look at what they need. Jihad Campbell is a guy who stands out right away because of the athleticism. And I think him learning from Levante David, right? Because David's not going to be around forever. Getting him in a room with Levante David would be so fun to me, right? So I look at that. Derek Harmon, though, is on the board as well. And I think Logan Hall, he hasn't become an all-world guy with Tampa Bay. He's had some solid reps, but and there were some, when I evaluated him, there were some limitations for me that I thought would come back to bite him at the NFL level. I think Derek Harmon would be an upgrade for you, right? And he's got that pass rushing ability, but he can 1-gap and 2-gap from 3-tech and 2-eye and 4-eye as well. So a really solid player for me. But since we have so many options at this spot, Jedi Barron as well could be an option. I question if Todd Bowles would like him because of the length, Jason Light, because he is a little bit shorter armed, under 30
They use
arms.
nickel a lot though, and he can play safety too, and he can play outside cornerback. I'm sure they would prefer him not to, but so if you have a defensive backfield of Barron, Tyke Smith, and Antoine Winfield rotating back there, he can do so much.
And that's the thing. Like, if you get Barron, where does Tyke Smith go, you think? Probably more to safety.
Well, they want him to be safety anyways to get him on the field every play. So it'd be someone would be coming. If he goes down to nickel, someone's coming in at safety, which would be Barron. So, or based on the look, you keep Tyke and move Barron. So it gives you that versatility there between all three of those guys, because they can all play in the box. They can all come down and be effective as blitzers and tackles for loss and cover the back end of the field. And they've got all three of them got some limitations, but I think they'd be interested in him.
You almost just talked me into it, man. I
want you to pick who you want. I just want to give you I cover the team. My educated and kind of informed process with Barron was normally I'd be like, yeah, no. Any other year I'd be like, yeah, no.
And I appreciate
to see the impact that Antoine Winfield Jr. had when he was playing that year in the nickel, and then Tyke Smith playing this year in the nickel, that's an impact player, and you can get an impact player who can make plays on the balls. And I know he doesn't have a ton of ball production, but a lot of the time is because, and I was listening to Ollie Connolly, and he put this in the best look-offs. He'll just be there. The quarterback will just say, nope. And he didn't get a ton of opportunity. And some of it was just kind of poor placement, but I do like him a lot. And the reason why I had him in my first round pick in my mock today.
And the thing is,
go with what's your heart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The thing, I was thinking, I didn't know if the Buccaneers thresholds would hit, but he is a top 15 player for me. He is my CB3 behind Will Johnson and Travis Hunter. He's a legit player, and I love what he brings to the table. I think he could be a tone setter for you on the back end. I think he's got the versatility, the playmaking, but a high IQ guy too, who's right away, I think, going to contribute to the kind of culture that you want as well. So you picked him in your mock, though. That's the thing. I don't want to be repetitive. I want to try and explore different possibilities too. So let's check the trade offers again real quick, just to see if we can stay in range for one of our guys. So 36, let's reject that. We'll reject that. 30, let's reject that too. And then we're moving back too far. We got to stay and pick. And Jedi Barron, like I said, I love the fit. You picked him, so we'll go a different direction this time. I'm really feeling Jihad Campbell. I think the amount of upside that he has, I think Todd Bowles can do so many different things with him. We talked about the linebacker position, right, with Femi Oladejo, right? Because of the off-ball experience that he has, you can use him in different ways. Jihad Campbell, he was an edge recruit before he transitioned to linebacker, right? You know, he has that pass rushing ability. He's got to improve his play strength for sure. And I do think he needs to continue refining the execution with his pass rush arsenal, but he's as explosive as they come. He's got incredible bend around the arc and when he's blitzing through gaps to corner. And then he's got the agility, you know, he's really instinctive for his age. He's got the coverage ability too, where he can man guys up as a big slot, but then play in zone and drop in Tampa too as well. So, you know, pretty much anything that you need him to do. I think the one thing that he needs to keep improving again is the play strength and the take on technique and run defense. There are times where he'll meet a blocker, an offensive lineman at the second level, and he won't be looking to dish out contact first. He'll be looking to meet the guy, you know, to absorb. Right. And if you're just looking to absorb, that guy's going to drive you out of the play and there's going to be an open lane. So I think Jihad Campbell needs to improve that take on technique, but he already does so many things well. And he has such a high ceiling. I think getting him in the same room as Levante David, I think getting him in that scheme with Todd Bowles, who can do his mad genius stuff and use him any way he wants. I really love the potential there. I know it's kind of, you know, tricky taking linebackers this early, but he is such a versatile, dynamic player for me. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Lock it in.
Let's do it. Let's lock it in.
Hold on. Wait 1 second. I have something for this.
Oh, here we go.
Wait, which one is it?
The suspense is killing me. There we go. With the 19th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Jihad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama.
I can't believe I just figured that out. Nathan, I disagree with you. The one thing that makes me a little bit nervous about Jihad Campbell is his, like, how long is he going to be out for? That's the thing. Yeah. Like, how long?
That is a concern. Yeah.
That hurts right there. Trey
my
Amos
philosophy is, Trey Amos right before. Oh God, that's a dagger to the heart right there. Yeah, no, I agree with the injury. That is a bit of uncertainty with him, and he probably won't be available right away for you. But at the same time, with a guy like this who is this talented, right? You know, you look long term, and you know, just getting him in the room with David, where he can talk to him and kind of, you know, bounce ideas off of him and kind of be a sponge while he's not on the field. And then once he is ready, I think he can hit the ground running that way. But you're right. That is a big element of uncertainty there.
All right. So we are back up on the clock here. Roll through our options.
And this is where it really gets tricky because there's so much variance and there's more players to choose from as well. So Braden Swinson, you took him in round 2. I'm going to rule him out since we already got him in your last mock. We'll go a different direction. As much as I love Swinson, and I would definitely take him here, we will rule him out. Darius Alexander, if you're looking for a long-term replacement for Logan Hall, I'm a big fan of Darius Alexander and his power profile at 3 tech. 6'4", over 300, 34-inch arms. So he's got that kind of, you know, natural leverage, and he's a powerful guy in the pass rush phase, but he can slab guys and run defense too. So
this is really late for him too. He will not be here.
Yeah. And that's one thing I'll have to look at in the MDS. By the way, you know, any of you people watching, I help curate the MDS and the rankings. So we're constantly updating it, kind of looking at ways that we can fine tune it and make it more realistic. And so I don't think there is such a thing as overthink in the NFL draft process. You know, I think there's so many different outcomes. So you got to be on top of it. But so any suggestions that you have?
Has those, everyone's going to have one. Yeah. Some of them, you know, I don't take too much stock in that, but I just don't think he'll be there. I think he could go as early as the first round.
He could be a surprise first round because he tested well too. He had a good Senior Bowl, so I really
well. I've spoiler alert, my next draft might have him in a trade back.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. I like it.
So I do like him as a player. This is your mock, so you go.
The pressure's on, man. Oh my gosh. You'd think I do so many mocks, you'd think I'd be more prepared for this, but I always get caught by indecision with these guys, with all these players. Let's check receiver. I think I saw Jalen Noel.
A good group of players available. Like the second round, I swear, like there's gonna be some really good starters.
And this comes back to what we were talking about at the very start. This is a starter draft. You get to this part of the draft, you're picking between so many guys that you like and that you can foresee positive outcomes for. But you can only take one at this spot. Yeah, exactly.
All these receivers here. Kyle Williams, I'm a little iffy on. Tez Johnson. I love Torrey Horton.
Jalen Royals, I'm a big fan of too.
Yeah, like all 6 of these receivers right here. If the Bucs took them, in the second or third round, I wouldn't be upset about it because I think all of them have game.
Yeah. Now let's check corner as well. I think receiver
Amos
is easier to stomach here.
Right.
Amos is gone. I do like Azariah Thomas a lot. I also think he's probably he's not the best fit for this scheme with Todd Bowles, running a little more zone, I feel like. So I don't know if I would take him here because he doesn't have the long speed to recover all the time. In a press man scheme, I would be all over Azariah Thomas.
Yeah.
But
I
don't know. Darian Porter, a little raw, a little high hipped. I don't love that. He is explosive.
2.0.
Yeah, he's kind of.
That's what he is.
Yeah, he's tricky. He really is. I don't think there's a corner that I would take at this value. Maxwell Harrison potentially, but he's light in run defense. I really don't like how that light play style translates. He's definitely going to have to beef up, and there are some inconsistencies that come with that. Andrew Makuba could be an option for you. I have a top 50 grade on him. I'm a big fan of Makuba. He's a little lighter too, but I think he holds up a little better in contact situations. He's explosive. He's got some nickel experience, but if you need to play him at too high, that's where he really shines. But you said Tyke Smith, they're expecting to play him more at safety. So I think we can go somewhere else here. Edge, we got Braden Swinson. Princely Uman-Milan is another player that I like a lot. Again, explosive, super bendy as well. Not as powerful as you would expect for his length, but he does have the explosion to bend. He's a pretty good run defender too. There's so many options.
He said that the Bucs have a lot of interest in him so far. They haven't been announced for a 30 visit, but he did say that the Bucs really like him.
Well, I will say, if you need a pass rush catalyst, Princely Uman-Milan is as dynamic as they come. He's got a volcanic first step. He can get as low as almost 90 degrees to the ground and run the corner and get past the apex. I mean, he's a really fun player. I think he still has room to grow into his frame and play with more power. And once he unlocks that part of his game, he can be really, really something. So we've got a lot of players to look at here. I don't know, man. We got Jihad Campbell. I'm leaning edge here just because of what they still need. I know they got Hassan Reddick, but he's on a 1-year deal. Chris Braswell has potential, but Yaya Diaby has good pass rush ability. But I still think they need that guy who can potentially be that central pass rushing force off the edge. And to me, I love Braden Swinson, but we're rolling him out since you picked him. I'm going to go with Princely Uman-Milan. They've shown interest in him. He has the elite explosiveness, the elite bend, the length to supplement power, and he's a good run defender. I really think, if he can continue to beef up his frame and improve his play strength in the speed to power phase, right, and exert more force at the point of contact, I think he can be a really good player.
Yeah, I do like him. I don't love these trade offers. I'd rather stay at 80. I don't really want future picks.
We can reject both of them. Yeah, I agree.
All right. So now let's bring up the big board here. So there's some guys that I like here. Again, we've got Jihad Campbell, Princely, Uman-Milan. But there's some guys one of the guys we talked about earlier, Alec Ayamanor.
Ayamanor is there. Yep. Norman Lott as well.
Yep.
Kyle Williams could be a good pick here.
I don't think he'd fit in with what the Bucs look for.
Yeah.
As far as, some character concerns and whatnot, and I just don't think he's someone that would be on the Bucs radar.
I got you.
Just like with his size and everything like that. I mean, I think Noel is like pushing it at 5'10", like 5'11". That's. If they want to go corner, I think Dorian Strong would be someone they'd be interested in.
Yeah, I agree.
See, I messed around on this earlier, and I'm like, the linebackers here, there's so many good linebackers in the third round.
I know, right? Chris Paul is there too. I know you like him a lot. Demetrius Knight, Smell Mondin as well. It's a great, and taking Jihad Campbell, you're banking on him being that much better than them, right? And that's an uncertainty. We don't know if it's going to be that level, right? But at the same time, I do like the player a lot. So this is kind of the tried and true tricky part of NFL draft evaluation is it's all about valuation, right? And where you take guys relative to where you can take other guys and what they can deliver for you. But I'm thinking of what to do here. Defensive tackle Norman Lott is there. I like CJ West a lot, but I don't think he fits with what they need. So we could go defense. Let's check wide receiver one more time, see what's there. Okay, so we got Torrey Horton is there. I honestly, like, I know you got him in round 5. I have him more of a round 3 value. I would be up for taking him here. But I also know there are some guys down the line that we could also get, developmental guys. Isaac Tesla, potentially Dante Thornton, maybe.
Yes.
So we could go. Let's go defense. Let's go defense again. Let's round it out. Logan Hall. I would lean toward him not having a long-term future here. Omar Norman Lott, I think, does have the developmental potential that you want. We talked about him earlier. He's got the natural leverage and the proportional length and run defense, and he's got the pass rush profile that you want to if he continue to refine his execution and expand his arsenal. I really love the speed to power profile. I think he's one of those guys who can really thrive alongside Vita Vea. That's the key, being that 3 tech. I think let's take him here. It's good value. The 84th pick in the NFL draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle out of Tennessee. I like how he waited to make the pick until we announced it. That was nice. Good synergy.
Yeah, I blew out anyone who's listening to this on their AirPods without being up so loud. Sorry, guys. Sorry. All right. So we've attacked so far the defensive side of the ball with linebacker, edge, defensive tackle. I think we really need to look at the secondary here. But let's see what's available as far as value. And
oh my God,
there is a good value player here. But there also is a good cornerback here that I'm kind of fond of as well. Jacob Parrish is still here.
Jacob Parrish,
Williams, Kobe Bryant. They took a linebacker for safety. At this point, you're better off waiting. I like a guy like Craig Woodson in the 7th.
I do like RJ Mickens, but I agree. I think for the most part, you can probably wait there.
Yeah.
So the value with Torrey Horton for me is too good to pass up. He's a top 100 player for me. I think he can be a movement Z for you early on. He's got enough vertical ability, but he can move the chains as well. He's got good hands. He's got some twitch in the rack phase. I really think he's a player who can be a solid rotational contributor just because you have so much depth and playmaking ability there. But once you get turnover down the line, he can move into a more of a full-time starting role and not miss a beat. I'm a big fan of what he has to offer. So round 4, 121, Torrey Horton is still here. Let's end his slide. With the 121st pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Torrey Horton, wide receiver, Colorado State.
Now you got to go secondary here. I feel like Bucs fans would be screaming. They're not trading that far back. They've got to keep this 5th round pick.
Let's do no trades from here on out. Let's just close it out. Let's go to corner first and see what's there. Noel Williams is still there, man. I like that value a lot. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. He's competitive. He's well versed. He's got a lot of versatility and playmaking. And even though he's not an elite athlete, I think he's definitely a good enough functional athlete. He's fluid. He's really agile and fast paced in the short ranges. I think that corrective mobility is going to help him a lot. So I'm a big fan. I think that this is an exciting class we're putting together. I like it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you look at that, you got your linebacker, edge, defensive tackle, wide receiver. You get a cornerback later than you want, but I think Noel Williams has the ability to develop into at least a high-end number 2.
For sure.
And that's really what you need if Zion's going to be a high-end number 1, which he's shown, the penchant for. And now I think right here, you just kind of, you look at where you did an attack, right? Maybe that's safety. Maybe you double up on corner. Maybe you double up at linebacker, defensive tackle. Let's take a look at what's left available. Tierningham Dawkins is probably the best player available.
Yeah, he's an athlete. Yeah,
he might not be there.
He's an athlete. You could develop him up if you wanted to. Craig Woodson is still here. I love his coverage mobility. I think that combined with his frame makes him a really good late round investment for you. So that could work. Glendon Miller is another potential option. He's got nickel and safety ability, being a taller guy who's pretty fluid despite his tall frame, and he's got good athleticism too. And I think he had 3 or 4 interceptions in 2024, so he's got some playmaking to him as well. Let's check the safety position. Let's lock in on a safety.
What happened to Elijah Huzzy? I thought he was pretty good last year or the year before. Did he just have a bad season?
I don't. He's one that I have to refresh on the tape for. I know he
Yeah.
measured in a little smaller than expected. He's probably going to be more of a nickel at the next level because of that. But I do think he's one of the better nickel late round guys if you wanted to invest late. So looking to
Go
safety.
primetime
Ooh,
junior.
yeah, primetime junior. He'd be a special teams ace on day one. That's for sure. With the hard hitting, Malik Verdon from Iowa State is another guy that I like a lot. 6'3", 6'4", has some too high ability, but he can come downhill as well. That 9.15 RAS, you see that there. He's an athlete at his size, so I think another guy who projects well. Special teams early on, but as a more of a strong safety complement to Antoine Winfield Jr. when Ty Key is in the slot. I think there's some versatility there as an attacking safety in Todd Bowles' scheme, which could be really valuable.
Just kind of
So
rolling through.
yeah, running back. Let's check running back one more time too, because we know Rashad White his contract will be up soon. Land Larson has some versatility to him, man. One of the better receiving backs in the class from UC Davis. If you wanted that compliment to Bucky Irving, that could be something for you.
Let's check the offensive line too, because Jason Light may not be able to attempt to keep himself away.
Yeah,
I don't love it. I don't love it.
Xavier Truss has
it.
versatility, but I don't know. I'm torn between two guys here. I'm torn between Land Larson, because I think Bucky Irving is your RB1. I think you can, he's got the playmaking, he's got the instincts as the runner, but Land Larson can be a really nice pass game weapon for you with the versatility. We got to get a blurb in there, but looking at the tape, he's definitely one of the more nuanced pass catching backs. But then Malik Verdon as well. I really like the special teams value at safety, but then being able to have that upside as an attacking strong safety in the box with his size and his athleticism. I think those things play really well. So those are the two I'm torn on here.
I got a coin. You want to leave it to chance?
Yeah, heads. Let's go heads, Land Larson. Tails, Malik Verdon.
Hopefully I catch this. All right.
Good catch. Good catch.
It is heads.
Oh, we're going with the running back. We're going with the pass game catalyst. And Land Larson, man, I haven't had a chance to finalize his grade, but from what I've seen, he's got fluidity. He's a dynamic player at the FCS level. And I think his receiving production was something like well over 600 yards. I mean, he's a guy who you can funnel targets to on third downs if you need to, and he can be a really good pass game complement. And, if Rashad White eventually moves on, I think you have a really solid variety of skills in that RB rotation.
Perfect. There's a draft right there. Jihad Campbell at 19. Oh, I forgot to. A
little late, but hey, we'll take it.
Jihad Campbell at 19 in the second round to get Princely Umanalian. Then you pick up the big defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott, followed by Tori Horton, who, if you want more information, I just mocked him to the Bucs, so check that out. It's over on my X page in Bucs Game Day. Noel Williams, who's a cornerback that was just announced they're bringing in for a visit, and Land Larson, running back. So I think it's a pretty good draft. I like it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. You're aggressively hitting the defensive line, right? And the second level as well with Jihad Campbell going to be kind of the X factor, but also getting value with Torrey Horton and Noel Williams on day 3. I really love both of those picks, and I think Land Larson provides good contrast too. So a lot of different outcomes that could happen for the Buccaneers, but I think they're also in a position where they can go different routes, and you can accept different outcomes for them, different scenarios. The flexibility is key, and I think they have that.
Right, and we could have went wide receivers round 2 or round 3. Chose to go round 4 and got a really good player too. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this draft unfolds for league wide, but especially for the Bucs. They put themselves, as we saw, in a position to kind of pick and choose with some of the prospects that might be there that might really fit the team. And speaking of prospects, my prospect preview drops tomorrow, guys, over at Bucs Game Day. We'll start with the quarterbacks. Expect like 4 or 5 because I'm not wasting my time on a bunch of quarterbacks. They really like Michael Pratt. They re-signed Kyle Trask. Unless immense value falls to them, they're not going to do it. So expect a very, very, or they move back a million times and get 4 more draft picks. It's not going to happen. So there'll be a few guys that they met with at the combine, a few guys who I think might be interesting to them if they slide down to like this, 7th, maybe 6th, 5th, if they find a way to get a 6th, but it's not going to be too crazy. Running backs, same thing. Not going to be too crazy running backs, but that's going to be out tomorrow. Ian, thank you so much for coming on, man. Great information about all the prospects, the 15 prospects that the Bucs have already met with for 30 visits. Give me some insight on my mock draft as well, and then doing this awesome mock draft we just completed as well. Appreciate your time on here, man. Go ahead, tell the people where they can find you.
Yes, you can follow me at IC_draft on X, formerly Twitter. Like I said, I help curate the MDS. So any ranking suggestions you have, any, questions, any, inquiries or insight, feel free to hit me up and I'll try and be responsive whenever I can. But then any NFL draft questions you have as well, feel free to hit me up. We're kind of on the home stretch now. So any information is good information, and it's going to be exciting to see what happens.
Yeah, I can't wait. We're almost 2 weeks away. It's 8:00. So by tomorrow, less than 24 hours, we can say 2 weeks away officially.
Yes, sir.
Until the Titans are on the clock and are picking Cam Ward. In the second round, it's probably going to be Hunter. So pick 3 is when we get really excited about what could happen in the mock. But thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your knowledge. And we'll definitely talk soon. Thanks a lot, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of the Parlay Podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Appreciate the comments in the chat. Appreciate everyone listening, watching on X, listening in podcast formation. Go ahead, come on over, catch us live. We'll be back here on Friday at 7 with John Vogel, former scout and draft analyst for the Sick Podcast. So definitely come check that out on Friday night. Because we'll be live here at 7:00. We'll do another mock draft and we'll break down some more stuff because that's what we're going to do here. We're going to get you guys the best draft guide that you can for the Buccaneers. Just so keep on tuning in. I appreciate you guys doing it. But that's going to do it for me here at the Power Parlay Podcast. Again, I'm JC Allen. We're out of here. Peace out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.